Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu. It's Thursday, August 18th. This is Africa 54.
Ghana's central bank shocks the nation with its largest ever lending rate hike. How will it affect the country? We'll have a report. The World Health Organization chiefs suggest racism could be behind the lack of attention the Ethiopia-Tigray humanitarian crisis is drawing from the international community. And as growing conditions in West Africa's Yam Belt deepen, scientists hope that sequencing genomes will help to boost yields.
We begin our broadcast in West Africa, where due to a deteriorating economy, Ghana's central bank has announced the country's biggest ever lending rate hike. David Doyle has the details.
Ghana's central bank has delivered its biggest rate hike ever amid crippling inflation. At an emergency meeting on Wednesday to address the economy's rapid deterioration, the main lending rate was raised by 300 basis points to 22%. The hike comes just 3 weeks after the Bank of Ghana's Monetary Policy Committee left the rate unchanged at 19%, saying it wanted to observe the impact of a series of record-breaking hikes. Since then, the Cedi currency has continued its steep decline, losing more than 6% against the dollar on Wednesday alone, according to data from Refinitiv Icon. That brought total losses for 2022 to 39%. Consumer inflation rose to 31.7% annually in July, its highest since 2003. The government's top statistician has warned it's not possible to say whether inflation has peaked. Having initially said it would not turn to the International Monetary Fund for help, Ghana is now in the early stages of negotiating a support package. Razia Khan, chief economist for Africa and the Middle East at Standard Chartered, said the hike could help demonstrate that the West African country is committed to reaching a deal. In a statement on Wednesday, the Monetary Policy Committee partially blamed Ghana's current economic troubles on external factors, including a strong dollar and tighter global financial conditions.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. A U.S. congressional delegation has arrived in Kenya to meet with the new president-elect and the opposition figure likely to file a court challenge to his election loss in the latest electoral crisis in the nation. The new U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman, says the delegation led by Senator Chris Coons also will meet with outgoing Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. President-elect William Ruto is Kenyatta's deputy president, but the two fell out years ago, and Kenyatta in the election backed longtime opposition figure Raila Odinga instead. Odinga says he is exploring all constitutional and legal options to challenge his close election loss. His campaign has a week from Monday's declaration of Ruto's win to go to the Supreme Court, which then has 14 days to rule. The political transition in Kenya will have significant impact on the East Africa region, where Kenyatta had been working with the U.S. to try to mediate in Ethiopia's Tigray conflict and promote peace efforts between Rwanda and Congo. 14 million Angolans are expected to vote in the August 24th general elections that will see Angolans abroad voting for the first time in the country's history. The race is tense and tight between incumbent President Joao Lourenço and his main challenger, Adalberto Costa Jr. Lourenço is hoping Angolans will hand him another 5-year term, while opinion polls show Adalberto ahead. All right, we move on to the Spanish judge who has ruled the death of former Angolan President José Eduardo dos Santos in Barcelona in July was from natural causes, discarding foul play, allowing the release and repatriation of his body. Law firms representing dos Santos' daughter, Shize dos Santos, had earlier successfully requested a full autopsy, citing alleged suspicious circumstances of his death without providing evidence, and also asking for his body to be buried in Barcelona. The court also said dos Santos had not indicated his desired burial place in his will, citing similar legal precedents to explain the judge's decision to hand the body to his widow Ana Paula Cristóvão dos Santos and allow its repatriation. The Director General of the World Health Organization says the humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray is worse than the conflict in Ukraine and suggests racism could be behind a lack of attention from the international community. Clara Frank has more.
The World Health Organization's Director General has suggested racism could be behind a lack of international attention being paid to Ethiopia's war-shattered Tigray region. In an emotional appeal, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who is from Tigray, questioned why the plight of civilians there is not getting the same attention as the Ukraine conflict.
I can tell you that the humanitarian crisis in Tigray is more than Ukraine, without any exaggeration. And I said it many months ago, maybe the reason is the color of the skin of the people in Tigray.
War broke out in Tigray in November 2020 between the TPLF and the federal government and its allies. The fight eased in March after both sides had fought to a bloody stalemate and the government declared a humanitarian truce. Tedros said the situation within Tigray is the worst disaster on earth.
Nowhere on earth 6 million people are sealed off. Nowhere. From basic services, from their own money, from telecom, from food, from medicine.
He added that he was not saying this because he is from Tigray, but because it is the truth. Millions of people are facing severe hunger. The UN and humanitarian agencies have warned that millions of people are facing severe hunger in the region's worst drought in 4 decades. That includes the threat of famine in Somalia. The WHO has called for $123.7 million to tackle the health problems resulting from growing malnutrition. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
With transportation costs tripling in the past year, Mozambican wholesalers are sending bananas to the market by bicycle instead of truck, aiming to reduce fuel costs. From Manica province in western Mozambique, Andre Baptista has the story, narrated by Carol Gernsberg.
Buying and selling green bananas feeds thousands of wholesalers' families in central Mozambique. But rising fuel costs and inflationary price hikes are cutting into their profits. So the wholesalers are using bicycles instead of trucks to get their fruit to market. The trip can sometimes be a grueling 90 kilometers or 56 miles a day.
It's better to pedal the bike so I can survive. If I go by car, when I come back, I can't buy more bananas from the farmers because I won't have money left.
These wholesalers typically buy fruit from farmers, then hire truck drivers to deliver it to the markets. But since January, truckers have doubled their transport fees because of rising fuel prices, and farmers have begun charging more for every bunch of bananas. Banana prices for consumers haven't risen as much at the markets, so the wholesalers are squeezed.
When fuel costs go up, the price of bananas goes up as well. But to transport this many bananas by truck costs a lot of money. I wouldn't have any profit.
The price of gas is getting too expensive. I buy the bananas and go to the city. I put them in the rear bike rack. I had a motorbike, but I sold it because gas prices are increasing a lot.
Banana wholesaler Elias Carrera said he wished he didn't have to travel the roughly 30 kilometers from outside Makate village to Chimoio, a provincial capital in central Mozambique.
It would be helpful to have a market near us. If we had one around, we could just take the bananas there and customers will come to buy.
Mozambique's government attributes rising fuel prices to the war in Ukraine, pushing up international crude prices. Analysts say pandemic-related inflation also contributes to the price hikes. In June, inflation in Mozambique accelerated to nearly 11% from just over 9% the previous month. The Bank of Mozambique predicts purchasing power will worsen, meaning banana wholesalers can expect more peddling. For Andre Batista in Manica Province, Mozambique, Carol Gunsberg, VOA News.
Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. In Friday's entertainment report, Heather Maxwell tells us about the Playing for Change Foundation that's doing great things in Africa. Still to come. As global food prices rise, scientists hope that sequencing genomes of the yam will boost production in West Africa. We'll be right back.
Home is more than just shelter, a private place to raise children and a private space to process your inner feelings and thoughts. Regardless of where you live, access to affordable housing is always a leading conversation in the society. This week, we are taking a closer look at how accessible affordable housing is in Africa and how women are breaking barriers in the real estate market. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other African news, a lawyer for 13 migrants says Morocco has sentenced them to 2.5 years in prison following a deadly mass crossing into the Spanish enclave of Melilla in June. 23 people died when 2,000 migrants, many of them from Sudan, stormed the fences along the frontier on June 24th. Sudanese officials say flash floods triggered by heavy rains continued to uproot homes across Sudan, with the death toll rising to 66 since the start of the rainy season. And Algerian firefighters are battling a string of blazes Thursday, fanned by drought and a blistering heat wave that has killed at least 38 people and left destruction in their wake. As growing conditions in West Africa's Yam Belt worsen, scientists hope that sequencing genomes of the root vegetable will help boost yields, something that is becoming especially important thanks to a rise in global food prices. Here again is Clara Frank.
Pounded into paste, ground into flour, boiled or fried, yams provide sustenance and livelihoods across West Africa. But growing conditions across the Yam Belt, from Guinea to Cameroon, are deteriorating just as prices of other staples soar. Nigerian market vendor Adewale Elekun sells yams. He says life for farmers in Nigeria is getting harder.
Before, the way they farmed was different, but the soil is bad now. The soil was good and the land was well graded in the past, so when farmers planted yam, the yam would germinate quickly. But today the quality of the soil has deteriorated, so pesticides that we used to kill all fungus now affect the yam planting.
The need to boost locally grown crops has become more acute due to global food price rises. That's where scientists like molecular geneticist Ranjana Batterjee come in. She is working at Ibadan's International Institute of Tropical Agriculture to complete whole genome sequencing of around 1,000 yam samples. She hopes this will ensure that future crops are more adaptable to a changing climate.
We are going to try to, take those genes and transfer, and then the quality will improve, the consumer preferences will improve, and also the yield of that crop will improve. So that will then ultimately lead to food security, not only in Nigeria, but also in West Africa where yam is being grown.
Banerjee says sequencing the yam's genomes will not just improve their yield, but will help keep it high, which will come as a relief for farmers across West Africa, who grow some 90% of yams worldwide. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
The United States and the European Union are closely studying Iran's response to what the EU says is its final proposal to salvage the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Indirect and intermittent U.S.-Iranian talks on reviving the agreement have been going on for 16 months. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports.
After Iran submitted a written response Tuesday to a proposal by European Union mediators to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, the Biden administration says it is engaging with European partners to closely consider Tehran's response. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said he agrees with the EU that what could have been negotiated with Iran in indirect talks over the past 16 months has been negotiated, and that reviving the nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, is better than living without it.
We look at this through the lens not of politics, but of national security. And we are confident that a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA remains the best and really the most effective means by which to once again verifiably and permanently constrain Iran's nuclear program.
Former President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from the deal in 2018 and imposed crippling sanctions on Iran. Iran resumed its nuclear program, saying it was for peaceful purposes only. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, said Tehran's nuclear program in 2022 is very different from the one in 2015.
And I think everybody recognizes that, starting with the Iranians, who are saying that they are making strides and amazing advances, and the program is moving ahead very, very fast, and not only ahead but sideways as well, because it's growing in ambition and in capacity.
One leading Iran expert told VOA that his sources in Iran are optimistic about salvaging the deal.
That this is probably the most optimistic tone I've heard from certainly officials in Tehran since these sort of nuclear talks were resumed back in April 2021. We've had so many rounds of talks that it's difficult to keep track.
Fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine is making Iran more eager than ever to have the sanctions removed, Vatanka says.
And it's the opportunity to sell more oil right now because of what Europe is going through in terms of energy crisis. Makes it such an opportune moment for them. They're keen to sell oil. They need the money desperately.
Another issue is the release of Americans held in Iran. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called attention Tuesday to the case of Iranian-American Siamak Namazi, saying that Namazi has been wrongfully detained in Iran for 2,500 days. Republican Representative Michael McCall told VOA that the release of detained Americans must be a part of any new deal with Iran, unlike the original deal in 2015.
The Biden administration needs to ensure that every single American hostage in Iran comes home. These innocent Americans have endured years of false allegations, wretched conditions, and separation from their loved ones.
Iranian media quoted a foreign ministry spokesman Wednesday as saying that Iran was prepared to swap prisoners with the United States. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
U.S. manufacturers and consumers now have more reason to consider solar energy with the newly passed Inflation Reduction Act, which provides tax incentives for the development of a more robust industry. Some manufacturers say the initiative is crucial to national security. VOA's Elizabeth Lee explains why.
Besides its casinos, Las Vegas advertises more than 300 days of sunshine a year. And with that comes heat and high energy bills for residents.
In a house like ours, two-story with a pool, it can be $800 or $900 a month.
To save more money, Jason Livingston is installing solar panels, which have become more affordable in the past decade.
Cost of solar has changed dramatically compared to the days when I started. And being in a place like this here in Las Vegas, financially it's a no-brainer.
Frank Rieger, founder of the Las Vegas solar company SolUp, is installing panels from Germany in Livingston's home. But the dominant player in the global solar industry is China. An International Energy Agency report in July found that China's expansion of solar panel production and innovation drove down manufacturing costs, and that China plays a part in more than 80% of the key stages of solar panel making. But dependence on China has created a supply chain risk. Oxen Solar is one of the few U.S. solar panel manufacturers. Its CEO, Mamoun Rashid.
If we don't have the supply chain here in the U.S., we look at it as a national security concern. If you have a renewable energy grid and it is powered by solar and the solar equipment is being deployed, and you don't have the ability to supply yourself, at any moment, the faucet can be turned off.
This year, the U.S. extended tariffs on solar products containing crystalline silicon from China. The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, banning products including solar components from China's Xinjiang region, went into effect in June.
The U.S. doesn't care at all about facts and the truth, but rather politicizes normal economic and trade cooperation and artificially interferes in normal industrial and supply chains and division of labor, wantonly oppressing Chinese companies.
The Chinese embassy told VOA the U.S. needs to immediately stop spreading lies and stop enforcing this malicious legislation. The newly passed Inflation Reduction Act includes tax credits for manufacturers and consumers to encourage the growth of the U.S. solar industry.
You're dealing with China. It's not a free market economy. You can never out-subsidize China. So that won't be enough. You also need to stop the bleeding and enforce trade laws.
Oxen Solar prompted a Commerce Department investigation earlier this year into whether some solar panels coming to the U.S. from 4 Southeast Asian countries were actually Chinese products attempting to dodge U.S. anti-dumping tariffs. Many U.S. solar projects stopped, fearing retroactive tariffs. In response, Biden announced a 2-year tariff freeze on solar components from those countries.
It was devastating.
The Commerce Department says its findings will be applied at the end of the 2-year period. The White House aims to triple domestic solar manufacturing by 2024. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Washington.
Now, members of Tanzania's ruling party are among politicians from 6 African countries who recently attended the first session of a Chinese Communist Party training school. The school was built to strengthen Chinese outreach to African countries, but critics say the training undermines efforts to advance democracy in Africa by promoting Beijing's model of one-party rule. Charles Kambe reports from Kibaha, Tanzania.
Fred Msai is one of several Party of the Revolution members who attended a seminar here for the politicians from 6 African countries and China. The Mwalimu Julius Nyerere Leadership School, opened in February, is located in Kibaha near Dar es Salaam and was built with $40 million from the Communist Party of China.
The services that are provided here are of high quality and beyond any doubt. That means this school has all the facilities and services that will allow any leader to participate in training for the betterment of our country.
The leadership school was co-funded by the ruling parties of Tanzania, South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, Namibia and Zimbabwe. School officials say the classes provide a platform for China to enhance exchanges and build party-to-party diplomacy.
The relationship between China and our school is in funding, such as buildings, and to run this school. But there is another one that I see. During the first training, they taught our students what is happening in China. They were taught what our colleague, China, did to bring about changes.
China has been hosting training classes and exchanges in Africa for decades, as far back as the 1950s. But over the past decade, they have grown both in number and profile. Analyst Goodluck Ngingo says the new school advances the Chinese Communist Party's model for ruling a country and also promotes the party's ideological allies.
Tanzania is among the countries where liberation parties with the socialist wing ideology continue to remain in power. This basically helps China and other countries that still believe in the one-party system. So you see how China ensures that the leaders who come continue to believe in socialist politics.
Ngingo says the training will present problems for activists who want to see their countries become or remain more democratic.
In politics, if there is no solid constitution that can ensure the majority rule, it will give the opportunity for things to be done by a few. A single-party system is a possibility, and this is because we have seen many African countries where the president comes to power and removes other political parties, and the ruling party remains.
Msei says he sees a bright future for Tanzanian politics due to the presence of the leadership school. But others believe the Chinese teachings will blunt the growth of democracy and only promote friction. Charles Kombe for VOA News in Kibaha, Tanzania.
And that's our show for today. We invite you to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.
From around the world, let's go.